Welcome to this programming tutorial. In today's tutorial, we're going to look at subroutines. A subroutine is a good way of organizing your code so that when you have repeated tasks, you can call a subroutine to repeat those tasks again and again. To create a subroutine, we use the command def, which stands for define. In this case, let's define a subroutine called hello world. After this, we're going to put two brackets and then a colon, so we can put code inside this subroutine with the identifier hello world. In this case, we're going to print hello world. Now, how do we access the code inside here, or how does it work? Well, what we do is we call the subroutine by its identifier. So in this case, I'll write hello world like this, with the two brackets over here, and then I'll run my program. There we go. Now, the cool thing about subroutines is you can use them as many times as you want. And what it'll do is every time it sees the name of the subroutine, the identifier, it'll run the code inside it. Like that. You might also notice that this subroutine looks awfully familiar. We've seen these type of subroutines before, with print, and with inputs, and with len. These are all subroutines pre-built into Python, but you can actually create your own. Now, there are three types of subroutines, two that we're going to look over, and one we're going to just have a quick look at. Let's first start looking at methods. A method is a subroutine that's applied to something like an object. We used this last lesson for our dictionary on cars. To use it, we use the update subroutine. The dot is a way to say that you're applying this subroutine to something. Anything that we see, any subroutine we see with a dot is known as a method. This subroutine is known as a procedure. A procedure is a subroutine that just runs instructions and doesn't give you anything back. Or doesn't return anything, should I say. Now, what does returning mean? Well, if we change this to something else, we can change this to write return hello world. This return command means that we're going to give back the string hello world. This is known as a function because it returns something. Watch what happens when I call the subroutine by its identifier again. We now no longer see anything happening over here. This is because we returns the value. When you return something, whatever data you're returning is what goes over this. So when the program sees hello world, it runs the code inside it, and when it gets the return value, it puts it where hello world is. So this would change into hello world, like it is over here. So how do we use this then? Well, we can store it in a variable, or we can print out what the return value is. There we go. Now, what if you wanted to build a very simple calculator and you wanted the user to enter the numbers? We could do that by changing this to, let's do a simple addition calculator. And we're going to return two values, but we'll leave this blank for now. In here, we're going to get two user inputs. And we're also going to convert them to integers, so that way we don't have to worry about converting them later. So we're going to typecast both of them to integers. Then we're going to call our subroutine over here. And actually, we're going to print it out so we can see the results. And in the here, or in the brackets, we want to be able to add stuff in there, or add these two in there, so we can use it inside our subroutine. Much like how we put this inside the print subroutine, so we can use this inside our print. So let's add both of them in. Now, this by itself will do nothing but produce an error. because we have to specify the parameters in here. However, you won't always know what the parameters are when you create a subroutine. So when we don't know what needs to be stored in there, we're going to use what's called variables or parameters. I say variables because they act like variables. Let's create two of them here. We'll call it n1 and n2. Now what happens here is the first parameter gets assigned to the first parameter over here, and the second parameter assigns to the second parameter over here. If I had another subroutine underneath, this was 10 and 5, user 1 would be n1 and user 2 would be n2. But then on line 8, 10 would be n1 and 5 would be n2. They run separate from each other. So let's now put n1 plus n2 here. So what this will do is it'll get user 1 and assign it to n1. And that literally would look something like this. And then user 2 to n2. It then adds together and returns a value. We could even store the answer in a variable and then just return that variable. Remember, the only difference between a procedure and a function is that a function will return something, whereas the procedure won't. If we run this program, and I enter two numbers, I get the answer. I can turn this into a procedure by writing print answer over here and removing the print statement over here. Now if I run my program, you'll see I get the exact same results. Now, every time you create a variable outside of a subroutine, like if I create C5 here, that variable becomes a global variable. That means that variable is accessible everywhere and throughout the scope of your program. What does that mean? Well, if I write print C here, and I'll take off the parameters over here, and we'll call addition over here so we can see it happen, we should get 5. That's because C is a global variable. But watch what happens if I set C to 10 in here, and then I write print C over here. It's changed C to 10 over here and printed it out. However, when it's gone to line 8, it prints out the original value. This is because this C is now a new variable, or a new what's called a local variable inside this subroutine. It's local because it belongs to this subroutine and only this subroutine. In other words, you can't see this variable outside. If I want this C value that I'm changing to be the global one, I need to go first and declare that I want to use or modify the global C variable. Now, this C is the same one as this one. And if I run my program, you'll see I get both of them as the same value. Thank you for watching this tutorial. I hope you found it helpful.